Chapter 9. Successful face-hugging. From beginning to end, Duncan never positioned himself as the good guy. It was simple: he wasn't cut out to be a superhero. This wasn't because he lacked a basic understanding of right and wrong, but rather due to the nature of his power, his connection to the xenomorph species. The moment the truth about his ability to parasitically consume a host and transcend its power through chest-bursting reproduction came to light, he would never be accepted by certain groups in this world. If exposed, even the most righteous of superheroes would fear and remain vigilant against him. That was why, from the very start, Duncan had half-heartedly joined this operation, his sights set solely on Abomination. Blade, or more accurately, S.H.I.E.L.D., which was currently assessing him, would undoubtedly believe that this mission was Duncan's way of accepting their extended olive branch. They'd see it as him showcasing goodwill and drawing closer to them. According to the usual trajectory, a morally inclined individual like Duncan, willing to risk himself for S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mission, would be evaluated and deemed a potential candidate for one of their specialized teams. Perhaps, one day, Duncan might even join the ranks of their elite squads, not necessarily the Avengers, as S.H.I.E.L.D. managed numerous special teams, with the Avengers being just one of many initiatives in the works. This was the normal course of things, and Duncan indeed matched the special aesthetic some individuals sought, possessing exceptional powers, intelligence, and a clean background. He was, in theory, the perfect candidate. Unfortunately, it was all a facade, predicated on the assumption that they remained ignorant of the horrifying reproductive methods of the xenomorph species and their unquantifiable growth potential. Becoming a superhero is impossible for me, but that doesn't matter. There's no need for me to waste energy kissing up to people who don't matter. Instead, I'll carve out my own path. I might not earn the world's respect, but I can command their fear. Duncan's thoughts were crystal clear. As long as he wielded sufficient power, nothing else mattered. Abomination was the key. As long as he could seize control of Abomination's body and use it to nurture his first warrior-class xenomorph, Duncan's overall power would soar to new heights. Of course, should he succeed, the results would shock the world and expose both Duncan and the xenomorphs to numerous dangerous entities. But those were mere details, problems for the future. For now, his focus remained fixed on Abomination. As long as his strength grew faster than the crises that followed, any risky action would be worth it. Xenomorphs, by their very nature, possessed an extraordinary ability to evolve rapidly when the right host was found. Swoosh. Duncan took out an egg. The egg's 4 petals opened, and a facehugger quietly crawled out. Abomination didn't see this, but hidden in a corner, praying to God to spare him from being crushed by flying debris, was Mr. Blue. He did see it. What was that? From its size, it looked like an ostrich egg, but the shell was soft, and a strange creature had crawled out of it. Agile and quick, its target was clear: Abomination. Mr. Blue was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. How could such a tiny creature, freshly hatched no less, dare target Abomination? It's impossible, Mr. Blue thought. There's no way it'll succeed. Abomination is my greatest creation. Even if he were swarmed by creatures capable of secreting strong acid, he wouldn't fall to something so small. On the battlefield, though Abomination was battered and bruised, his powerful body was healing rapidly thanks to the Hulk-derived blood coursing through him. His anger was also slowly boosting his strength. Although his growth soon plateaued, likely due to the blood serum reaching its limit, he could still casually deliver punches with a force of over 100 tons. Any xenomorph hit by him would be either killed or gravely injured. As the battle raged on, more and more xenomorphs were killed, their acid blood leaving no intact corpses behind. Yet, even in death, they expended their last ounce of strength to ensure their blood splashed onto Abomination, leaving increasingly horrific wounds. The attrition was taking its toll, and even Abomination began to falter. Not bad, little bugs, but it's still not enough. You think you can stand against me with this kind of power? Abomination sneered. In this short time, he had already killed 5 of the strongest xenomorphs. The remaining ones were smaller and weaker in comparison. Even though one of his arms and part of his shoulder had been corroded to the bone, he managed to hold on. Victory belonged to the strong. To the mighty Abomination. That was what he thought, determined to destroy these bugs, find Duncan, crush him, rest a little, and then go after the Hulk to prove that his pursuit of power had never been wrong. But just as he felt a sliver of exhaustion, alongside the joy of impending victory, the facehugger seized its chance. Hitching a ride on the back of a messenger xenomorph, it leapt onto Abomination's outstretched hand, demonstrating extraordinary agility as it scurried up his fingers and landed squarely on his face. What the hell is this? With a burst of strength, Abomination ripped the messenger xenomorph in two, child's play for him, as these xenomorphs were designed to parasitize ordinary mammals. But his arrogance betrayed him. Who would have thought that the real danger would come from such a tiny creature? Even a being as strong as Abomination experienced a moment of dizziness when the facehugger latched onto him. Although his rage soon dispelled the sensation, and he used 2 fingers to crush the facehugger against a wall, smashing it into pulp. Sizzle! The remnants of the facehugger burst apart, corroding the wall as its acid blood oozed out. A creature this small contains such blood. Whoever created this thing must be insane. But power obtained through such methods could never compare to mine. True power lay in pure strength. This was the conclusion Abomination had reached after observing the Hulk and gaining some of his power himself. Now, he was even more determined to wipe out these disgusting creatures before hunting down the mysterious young man opposing him. Yet, just as Abomination prepared to attack, he noticed something strange. The Xenomorphs were retreating, gathering together, and the young man had reappeared, standing farther away with a calm expression. Blonsky, we'll meet again soon, in another form. A smile spread across Duncan's face. The moment the parasitism succeeded, he felt a profound sense of relief. No matter how loudly Abomination roared or how violently he thrashed, Duncan found him endearing. The more majestic and powerful Abomination appeared, the more satisfied Duncan felt, like a proud father. Furious, Abomination hurled a chunk of steel-reinforced concrete at Duncan, but the 5 remaining xenomorphs moved in unison. Their claws deflected the debris with ease, sending it crashing aside with a loud boom. Amid the dust, Duncan stood unmoved, serene and composed. With elegance and poise, he radiated confidence. Abomination roared, charging forward in rage. But Duncan leapt gracefully, landing dozens of meters away with a physical prowess that stunned even Abomination. When Duncan successfully escaped, Abomination was left bewildered. The next time we meet, I'll kill that bastard. Abomination muttered as he worked to repair his injuries. Frustrated, he punched a wall, sending part of the ceiling crashing down onto his own head. But we don't even know who he is, Mr. Blue remarked. Abomination responded with a brutal kick, nearly obliterating the poor man. By some twist of fate, or misfortune, Mr. Blue collided with a carefully stored vial of unused Hulk serum. Chapter 10. The Ancient One's troubles. The clash between Abomination and Duncan caught the attention of many. Looks like it's an intense fight, but who are you fighting? Blade asked, overlooking the scene from a distant rooftop. I found a replica of the Hulk and decided to say hello, Duncan replied nonchalantly. If you clean up your pets and heal their wounds, maybe I'll believe you, Blade said with a sinister grin, pointing at the xenomorphs standing near Duncan. Seems like you've suffered a lot of losses. That gives your enemies a chance to take you out. Don't worry, I'm not that easy to kill. If by enemies you mean vampires, I hope they come in droves, Duncan said coolly. Blade studied the xenomorphs closely, his mind churning. He could tell that Duncan had an extraordinary level of confidence in the creatures he created. Furthermore, the crowned xenomorph he had been expecting to see was conspicuously absent. The two exchanged casual remarks until the injured but recovering Abomination stormed onto the street, roaring. Blade looked surprised. His heightened instincts immediately registered the immense threat emanating from Abomination. In truth, even he would struggle if struck by one of Abomination's punches head-on. What truly caught Blade's attention, though, was the half-healed state of Abomination's body. Was that your doing? It was. How many of your xenomorphs died? Nearly half. Nearly half. And you still have 6 left. Looks like you've been busy preparing in secret, Blade said in shock. How long had it been? Already, there were a dozen or so of these creatures, and the 6 survivors included one that looked particularly strong. With a bizarre, almost sci-fi appearance, it was clearly a new xenomorph. To have suffered such heavy losses attacking Abomination and still fail only underscored how dangerous Abomination was. The two then watched as Abomination rampaged down Broadway, violently kicking cars off the street. If it were just empty vehicles, Blade could have stayed put. But when he saw civilians caught in the chaos, he couldn't stand by any longer. Drawing his blade, he leapt into action. With his extraordinary physique, he sprinted along the side of a building and rescued a civilian. But Duncan didn't move. He waited patiently, anticipation gleaming in his eyes. This strange stillness surprised certain observers. What's he doing? Someone asked. People are dying, and he's just standing there. Duncan pointed at the screen in disbelief. Maybe he's scared. He fought that monster once, took heavy losses, and now he's too afraid to go back in, Nick Fury muttered, shaking his head. Was that all? A bit of fear wasn't necessarily a bad thing, it meant he respected power, making him easier to control. While Fury adjusted Duncan's evaluation rating downward to useful but not reliable, Blade wasn't as quick to dismiss him. Blade doubted Duncan was scared and suspected he'd discovered something critical. Throughout this, Blade had never sensed fear or hesitation from Duncan. The situation came to a head when Bruce Banner leapt from a helicopter, stumbling as he transformed into the Hulk. Even Fury stopped paying attention to Duncan, his focus locked on the Hulk. With the Hulk now in play, who cared about Duncan? Did people even realize how much value the Hulk brought to the table? Did they understand his raw power? Hulk. The sight of Hulk sent Abomination into a frenzy. The rage stirred by Duncan was now fully unleashed. Abomination abandoned Blade and charged at Hulk, each step leaving massive craters in the asphalt. Boom! Hulk was sent flying, having been subjected to experiments and injected with suppressive drugs by Mr. Blue. Hulk felt weak and couldn't unleash his full strength, allowing Abomination to dominate him. The two giants brawled, colliding and rolling like rampaging gorillas, leaving chaos in their wake. Every blow flattened cars and turned buildings into rubble. Abomination grew more excited, raining punch after punch on Hulk. Something seemed to be brewing in his chest, building toward an explosive release. See this, Hulk, I'm stronger than you. I, Emil Blonsky, Abomination, am the strongest. Abomination roared into the sky. Countless eyes were glued to him, and the moment was broadcast worldwide, sparking global frenzy. This was a defining event. Individuals with extraordinary power were brazenly displaying their might, sowing death and destruction. Watching these two giants clash, ordinary punches crushed sturdy cars, and buildings crumbled like tofu under their fists. At that moment, many others with extraordinary powers around the world took notice. Professor, we could still intervene, a member of the X-Men said. No, we can't act. This is fundamentally a human conflict. If we act recklessly, we risk triggering certain sensitivities, Professor X replied. The X-Men watched the breaking news on television, divided in opinion, but ultimately turned to Professor X in his wheelchair. Yet the professor wore a look of confusion. Something's off, that Abomination, it's not just him. There's another consciousness within him, one that's rejecting my psychic link. It's strange. For the first time, Professor X encountered something like this. The presence of another consciousness within Abomination was one thing, but this consciousness seemed deeply bound to a third, unknown mind. Was Abomination merely a product of an experiment gone wrong, or had someone deliberately created him? Professor X hesitated. He could calm both Abomination and Hulk with his psychic powers, but given the precarious position of mutants. Destiny once said that in many futures, mutants face extinction. I must tread carefully, avoiding unnecessary actions to ease tensions with humanity, he thought. Professor X felt a heavy burden, unable to share Destiny's visions of countless doomed futures with anyone. Were mutants truly doomed, no matter the path they chose? What was the right course of action? Meanwhile, someone else was far more carefree. The Ancient One sat atop a snowy mountain, her senses attuned to the cosmic dimensions. She scanned New York briefly amidst her work monitoring interdimensional threats. Realities shifted again, but it's not the work of an otherworldly demon. This is just the course of Earth's natural development. As a Skyfather-level being armed with the Time Stone, the Book of Vishanti, and other mystical artifacts, the Ancient One could perceive the subtle changes on Earth. She wasn't inclined to interfere. Unlike the Time Stone, she didn't possess the Reality Stone and couldn't rewrite established facts at will. She was more concerned with her mounting mystical debts. Vishanti hasn't demanded anything yet, and Sidorak is quiet, so white magic and demon spells are safe for now. The real issue is the black magic. In the multiverse, all magic ultimately came from magical entities, godlike beings of unimaginable power. Borrowing their magic always came with a price. The Ancient One was fine with Vishanti and Sidorak, who were relatively low maintenance. But her black magic debt, borrowed from Dormammu, who in turn borrowed from the elder god Chthon, was a problem. Chthon's reputation for pettiness and wrath was legendary. Even sealed away, a mere breath from him could obliterate countless universes. For now, Dormammu was shouldering the debt for the Ancient One's black magic use, a situation that clearly irked him. The Ancient One sighed. Blame Chthon. Look at what he's reduced you to, Dormammu. She murmured to herself, casually casting a black magic spell to extend her lifespan. Deep within the dark dimension, Dormammu opened his eyes in fury, his resentment palpable. Damn it, the debt had increased again. Chapter 11, he's sided with the deviants. The world's eyes were on New York. Even Iron Man decided to deploy urgently. Tony Stark, we don't need you here. General Ross shouted through a megaphone from a helicopter. Ha, you can't stop me. If I were you, I'd jump off that helicopter after screwing up the super soldier program this badly, Tony retorted mockingly. Like a meteor, he descended from the sky, glowing brightly. Extending both hands, he aimed at the battling Hulk and Abomination. Make a wish, boys. Boom, 2 energy blasts shot out but proved useless, they didn't even scratch their defenses. The 2 giants barely noticed him as they roared and exchanged blows. Similarly, they couldn't breach each other's defenses either. Sir, the density of their subcutaneous fat is at least 3 times stronger than steel. We need to increase output power, JARVIS, Tony's faithful AI, reported. Increasing power will take them down. Maybe I should bring out the shoulder-mounted armor-piercing rounds. That might break their skin enough to get their attention. You're full of great ideas. I should upgrade your programming. Tony zipped back and forth between the 2 monsters, more of a distraction than a serious threat. The Mark III suit wasn't designed for battles of this magnitude. Worse, Tony noticed Hulk's strength steadily increasing over time. Initially overpowered by Abomination, Hulk had now grown strong enough to match him blow for blow. It was only a matter of time before Hulk broke free from the suppressive serum's effects. His power would surge, and he'd eventually overpower and defeat Abomination. And when that happened, would a rampaging Hulk be able to resist his destructive instincts? Hey, vampire, you planning to help or what? Tony flew over to Blade and yelled. Blade, already well known in the underground, had been recognized by JARVIS instantly. Blade's eyelid twitched as he suppressed the urge to slice Tony and test the durability of his suit. He replied coldly, I've already saved over a dozen people. Then what are you waiting for? Or are you hoping that kid over there with those weird creatures will save the day? Blade glared at Tony. If he wasn't mistaken, JARVIS had probably already hacked into the satellites monitoring the area. But Tony wasn't entirely wrong. Blade was indeed curious about what Duncan was planning. His instincts told him the young man was waiting for a pivotal event, but what could it be? Damn it, damn it. Meanwhile, Abomination, bloodied and battered, was horrified to realize that his once superior strength had been overtaken by Hulk. Hulk's strength truly had no limit. If I hadn't wasted so much time and energy on those strange creatures, I wouldn't be losing. I hope that Mr. Blue is still alive, if I can inject more Hulk serum. Fueled by envy and desperation, Abomination's obsession with surpassing Hulk drove him mad. No one understood the deep-seated fear and awe he felt when he first encountered Hulk as a regular human. Boom, another punch sent Abomination flying. As he got back up, an overwhelming exhaustion hit him. This was terrifying. Why was he feeling tired? It felt like something inside him, something far more dreadful, was draining his energy. His muscles were numb, his superhuman organs felt alien to him, and something horrifying seemed ready to burst out of his chest. If I can just rest, inject more serum, I'll surpass Hulk. Once I defeat him, I'll drain every drop of his blood and transplant his spinal cord into my body. This extreme reverence for Hulk had morphed into jealousy and a twisted desire for possession. Clutching his chest, Abomination turned and fled under the glare of helicopter searchlights. His speed was halved, far from his peak. If anyone could see him up close, they'd notice bizarre protrusions bulging from his chest, as if something were about to break free. He's running away. This, I still don't understand. Where did these 2 come from, and why are they fighting? Blonsky might have disappointed me, but at least he had a brain. As people frantically discussed the chaos, Hulk hesitated. Unsure whether to pursue Abomination, he ultimately used the distraction to leap away and escape. General Ross, however, was unwilling to give up. Hulk was too dangerous to control, but there was still hope for Blonsky, the super soldier he'd cultivated. Ross viewed Blonsky as a crucial part of the super soldier program, powerful, yet still retaining his intelligence. At that moment, a civilian helicopter from a New York media outlet shifted its spotlight to focus on a sudden movement. The light revealed a figure with a few strange-looking creatures running at incredible speed. Though the footage was blurry and the figures quickly disappeared amidst the chaotic streets, the scene was enough to capture attention. Was it just my imagination? Did we get that on camera? A reporter rubbed his eyes and checked the footage. The scene quickly spread, seen by countless people watching their TVs at home. Most dismissed it amidst the evening's extraordinary events. Muscle-bound giants and a billionaire in a metal suit were already enough to process. Another odd sight barely registered. Deviants. Those creatures are deviants. But all deviants were wiped out over 500 years ago. How are they still alive? In London, Circe, an Eternal created by the Celestials, was teaching at a school when she saw the footage on TV. Though the images were blurry, the creatures' forms were unmistakably similar to deviants. The 11 Eternals had spent millennia eradicating deviants. How could there still be survivors? And why was a human working with them? Panic gripped Circe. Deviants preyed on intelligent life. Left unchecked, they'd kill countless humans. Unaware of the Celestials' true purpose for the Eternals, Circe believed their mission was to protect humanity. In reality, they were merely tools to foster humanity's population growth and expedite the emergence of a slumbering celestial at Earth's core, one that fed on human consciousness. Its birth would mean Earth's destruction and humanity's extinction. Circe immediately reached out for help. Her first thought wasn't the Eternals' leader, Ajax, but her partner, Akaris, the team's powerhouse, wielding flight, heat vision, and a steel-like body. Chapter 12. Chest Bursting. Many people had yet to realize that Abomination's rampage, born of a moment of madness, might have seemed like a dangerous public spectacle. The incident, however, was suppressed before causing greater harm. But in truth, Abomination's outburst ignited the ambitions of countless individuals with ill intentions. It showed that individuals possessing extraordinary powers could brazenly wreak havoc in the public eye, declaring their strength to the entire world. People had always been aware of dangerous groups like the Brotherhood, but they seemed distant, like threats that didn't concern them. That feeling would vanish from now on. A new, turbulent era had arrived, filled with lunatics and monsters putting on macabre performances. Thud, thud, thud. Abomination barreled through obstacles, a series of buildings and vehicles, as he stumbled back to the lab. In his hazy mind, he knew his actions were reckless. The smarter choice would have been to flee the city and contact General Ross in private, working out a reconciliation. Together, they could have pinned tonight's chaos on the Hulk, joined forces to hunt him down, and reaped even greater benefits. Unfortunately, Abomination's frustration made him irrational. He stubbornly believed that injecting more serum would amplify his strength and salvage his dignity. Now back at the shattered lab, he frantically searched for what he needed. If you're looking for that big-headed scientist, he's hiding about 300 meters away, observing everything, a voice came from the shadows. Duncan stepped into the dim light. He had been waiting for Abomination. You've been lying in wait for me. Abomination growled, his grotesque face twisted with anger. Indeed, I've been observing you and knew you'd return here, Duncan replied calmly. He didn't rely on sight. His heightened senses allowed him to track the xenomorph parasite inside Abomination's body, pinpointing his exact location. The moment Duncan appeared, it signaled that the timing was perfect. Originally, Duncan thought the xenomorph parasite growing within Abomination, a remarkably resilient host, would need more time to develop to the chest-bursting stage. Unexpectedly, the parasite's growth had exceeded his expectations. Perhaps it was Abomination's genetics, or the Hulk-derived DNA coursing through him, that accelerated the xenomorph's development. Moreover, Abomination, as a host, was the ideal incubation chamber, brimming with vitality and rich in energy. You know, Duncan said as he studied the monstrous figure approaching him, I've imagined this moment countless times during the past few minutes. His gaze lingered on Abomination's chest. Compared to you, vampires are nothing. Abomination couldn't understand Duncan's cryptic words, but he knew something was wrong with his body. It wasn't just his dulled senses sharpening. Duncan's presence seemed to trigger something, and an alarming protrusion began to rise from his chest. If not for his reinforced muscles and skin, the xenomorph would have already burst free. For an ordinary human, such violent physical changes would have been fatal. This was your doing. What have you done to me? Abomination stared down at himself in disbelief. He reached to grab at the protrusion, but the moment his fingers, capable of crushing steel, applied pressure, excruciating pain coursed through him, as if he were tearing at his own organs. He recalled the strange spider-like creature and vaguely grasped the horrifying truth. No matter what this is, I'm Abomination, the strongest being on this planet. I can't die, he roared. No, You will die, Duncan replied, stepping closer. Don't mistake the xenomorph for an ordinary parasite. The moment it bursts from your chest, it will have perfectly assimilated your genetic material, replacing your vital organs and spinal column. It will become a part of you. Once it emerges, your body will lose these parts forever. Your weak regenerative abilities won't restore what's missing. No one's body can regrow perfectly functional organs that have already been replaced. Abomination's corpse would, in turn, become sustenance for the xenomorph. Roar. Abomination's bloodshot, green eyes were filled with rage and terror. He swung his massive arm in desperation, aiming to crush the insignificant human before him. Boom. Duncan raised his arms to block the blow. The impact drove his legs halfway into the floor. His muscles tore under the strain, and his bones cracked audibly. Yet he held firm. His injuries began to heal rapidly. Why could an ordinary man like Duncan withstand such force? The answer was simple. His body also hosted a dormant xenomorph parasite. Squelch. With a grotesque burst, Abomination's chest exploded. Blood splattered in every direction, a testament to the horrifying pressure that had built up inside him. Abomination's massive body convulsed violently as his remaining flickers of sanity watched, horrified, as the creature emerged from his own body. The sight defied the limits of his feeble imagination. The creature resembled a nightmare incarnate, using his flesh as a vessel to enter this world. It was born drenched in blood, shaking its grotesque head and letting out a piercing screech. The xenomorph was terrifyingly powerful even at birth, standing nearly 2 meters tall. While the height might not seem impressive, other xenomorph types began as small, vulnerable larval forms. They required hours of rapid growth to reach maturity, typically 2 to 3 meters in height. Duncan assessed the xenomorph's condition and confirmed it was exceptionally strong at birth. Its development would only accelerate. Within minutes, perhaps less than an hour, it would become a formidable predator. As for Abomination, he was already doomed. Just as Duncan had predicted, the xenomorph had fully absorbed Abomination's superior genes. Upon emerging, it severed its genetic link to its host. Despite Abomination's regenerative ability, his body could not replace his missing chest cavity and vital organs. They had vanished as though into thin air. Abomination's bulging eyes burned with rage and despair. He stretched a trembling hand toward the creature, attempting to crush the nightmare that had emerged from his body. But what met him was the xenomorph's inner jaw, faster than a bullet, which pierced his skull in one swift strike. Crunch. The xenomorph began devouring its former host, wasting no time as it consumed every scrap of flesh to fuel its growth. Chapter 13. The Poor Man's Superman Mr. Blue hid in the distance, his oversized head now throbbing with the overwhelming power of the Hulk serum, greedily observing everything unfolding before him. Kicked away by Abomination, a drop of Hulk serum had landed on his head, triggering a groundbreaking evolution in his brain. But the smarter he became, the more reluctant he was to leave. He couldn't let go of these strange creatures. With his newfound intellect, Mr. Blue processed every bit of information he had seen upon first encountering Duncan and the xenomorphs, running countless simulations. No exaggeration, his memory and computational capacity now surpassed even the most advanced artificial intelligence. He marveled at the xenomorph's perfection as a weapon, where every contour of its body was designed purely for combat efficiency. He noticed subtle differences among the xenomorph types and, through careful deduction, pieced together fragments of their nature, making it even harder for him to walk away. Then, with his enhanced vision, he witnessed the horrifying moment when Abomination was chest-bursted. His entire body trembled, not just from fear, but from exhilaration. So, monsters like this exist in the world. I understand now. That man carried the egg for a reason. The spider that emerged and latched onto Blonsky's face only to die moments later, everything had a purpose. It was all for parasitism. Everything was to acquire Blonsky's power. If that were all, Mr. Blue would have been astonished but not desperate enough to risk his life to stay. But when he saw the xenomorph's inner jaw, sharp as a spear, effortlessly penetrate Abomination's missile-proof skull, he shivered. Piecing everything together from his deductions, Mr. Blue formed a hypothesis. These creatures can parasitize different hosts and absorb their powers. No, their genes. But how do they filter through the infinitely complex genetic sequences of an organism so quickly? What criteria do they use to differentiate between valuable and worthless genes? Is it just extracting combat-related genes? Or something even more outrageous, absorbing all superior genetic traits while discarding the inferior ones, emerging far more powerful than the host upon chest bursting? Mr. Blue couldn't be certain. The idea was too wild. But if it were true, there was no doubt, these unknown creatures were perfect beings. He could hardly fathom how the mysterious man had acquired these creatures or managed to control them. A psychic link, like Professor X. Or perhaps, like birds, they imprint on the first being they see as their parent. Mr. Blue's heart raced wildly. As a scientist, ambition came naturally to him. But above all, he had an innate drive, an obsession with the pursuit of perfection within his field. To Mr. Blue, creatures like Abomination and the Hulk were mere relics of nature compared to the Xenomorphs, obsolete and insignificant. The stronger, more exceptional, and more boundless the host's potential, the more the Xenomorph surpassed them upon bursting forth. How could anything compete? Most people can never fully realize their potential due to time, energy, and countless other limitations. It's impossible to master everything one could theoretically excel at. But Xenomorphs are different. They seize all the host's superior traits, max out their potential, and evolve into a mature form that surpasses the host entirely. It was terrifying, suffocating, and beautiful. They're mine. These perfect creatures should belong to me. Samuel Stearns, the greatest biologist in human history. Mr. Blue's giant head finally stopped swelling, his intellect having expanded nearly 500-fold in an instant. But intelligence aside, when confronted with such unheard-of monsters, his hysterical greed and desire nearly drove him mad. And that black-haired man, he withstood Blonsky's desperate attacks. His body isn't normal either. Could it be related to these creatures? Is that why he can control them? Though Mr. Blue's intellect was unparalleled, the lack of information in this unknown field left his mind reeling. The logical impasse was suffocating. Suddenly, Duncan turned his head and looked in Mr. Blue's direction. Their eyes met. He noticed me. The thought exploded in Mr. Blue's mind. Looks like the big-headed baby pulled through, Duncan mused, but I wonder how he measures up to the other Samuel Stearns. While mentally communicating with the Abomination Xenomorph, Duncan also kept an eye on Mr. Blue. In the comics, Samuel Stearns, the leader, is reputedly one of Earth's 8 smartest individuals, gaining his immense intellect from gamma radiation. However, the Mr. Blue standing before Duncan had enhanced his intelligence through a drop of Hulk serum on his brain. This confirmed something for Duncan. The universe he was in was not purely the movie version. Given the vastness of Marvel's multiverse, recklessly assuming the nature of the universe without extensive exploration was a surefire way to get himself killed in critical moments. Maintaining a cautious attitude toward everything was the safest mindset. Besides, even if this were purely the movie universe, it wouldn't be safe. Beyond the universe, multiversal entities toy with entire dimensions, lending power, planting traps, setting up disasters. Who knows when some obscure corner might spawn a being infused with multiversal-level power? Not to mention the supercosmic entities that exist beyond the multiverse, whose danger was beyond comprehension. By the time Marvel's 7th multiverse came into existence, countless true big shots had made their moves, upgrading Marvel's cosmology to omnipotent concepts. Sending a messenger Xenomorph to secretly monitor Mr. Blue, Duncan turned his gaze to the distance. The commotion here had already spread. He anticipated someone would soon arrive. However, he didn't expect the newcomer to be Blade, Iron Man, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, or any other heroes or villains. No, it was Superman. A figure clad in a blue and gold bodysuit floated effortlessly in midair, needing no physical medium to remain suspended. His face was stern, his eyes flashing with golden light that hinted at an immense energy ready to fire at any moment. Other than lacking a cape and red briefs, this guy bore an uncanny resemblance to a certain superhero from the next universe over. At first glance, Duncan kept his composure, but internally, he couldn't help feeling awed. He hadn't expected the first one to show up would be this guy. One of the 11 Eternals stationed on Earth for thousands of years, tasked with fostering the celestial race and indirectly dooming Earth and humanity, Akaris. Chapter 14. Even Marvel's Superman has to taste my wrath. Meanwhile, the creature remained unfazed. Emerging unscathed, it lashed its tail and flexed its massive muscles before charging at Akaris again, unleashing devastating force. Once again, the two collided, sending shockwaves through the city. Why are there more monsters? Wasn't the fight on Broadway already over? What the hell is going on today? These two are even crazier than the last ones. At first, some citizens thought Akaris was a hero and the creature a villain. But within seconds, they realized the truth. Neither of these combatants cared about their lives. The only difference was that Ikaris fought with blatant disregard for human casualties, while the creature seemed to intentionally move the battle to less populated areas, though it still left a trail of destruction and occasional casualties in its wake. Chapter 15. A Shattered Mindset. This strange appearance does indeed resemble the Deviants. Circe, one of the Eternals with the ability to manipulate energy, was intently rewatching a video uploaded online. She had already informed Ikaris, another Eternal, and estimated that he, being in North America, should have arrived on the scene by now. Frankly speaking, appearing publicly in modern society often caused complications. The last time they eradicated the Deviants was back in the 16th century. In earlier times, they could act without restraint, as global attention wasn't an issue. Within a few decades, their existence would fade from human memory. But now, with countless recording devices everywhere, things were different. The Deviants, who should have been entirely eliminated, creatures that specifically preyed on humans, had inexplicably resurfaced. The Celestials gave us life, and we must use it to carry out their will, to protect humanity from the Deviants. I hope Ikaris can quickly confirm if these unfamiliar entities are truly Deviants, Circe murmured. Unbeknownst to her, her trusted lover, harboring some indescribable emotions, had already rashly labeled Duncan as an enemy and engaged him in a brutal fight. It wasn't long before she found out. Her eyes widened as she watched the fierce battle between two destructive figures unfold on the internet. The situation is crystal clear now. An unidentified man flew into New York at supersonic speeds, roughly 10 times the speed of sound, and confronted Duncan for reasons unknown, Fury explained, pointing at the satellite footage. His face was expressionless, though visibly darkened with concern. Energy monitoring satellites indicate this man possesses an incredibly high energy index. Where did this superhuman even come from? As the head of a spy organization, Fury was always prepared for unexpected situations, but he despised any form of unforeseen variables. Soon, an even more shocking revelation emerged. From the ruins of a shattered experimental lab associated with Abomination, another hulking figure appeared. Abomination. Did he team up with Duncan? Hill exclaimed, startled, but quickly realized her mistake. This new figure wasn't Abomination. Satellite AI continued its analysis, and despite the limited perspective, the conclusion was clear: the new entity was smaller than Abomination, a compact version. This is an alien organism, Duncan interjected after a brief pause, his voice dry. Maybe I'm mistaken. Perhaps Abomination, injured by Hulk, returned to this lab seeking the source of his transformation. But instead of Abomination, something similar but clearly alien emerged. The experienced agents were momentarily silent, stunned by the profound implications of what they had just seen. The information conveyed in the brief footage was astonishing and almost shattered their understanding of the world and life itself. Could their assumptions about the situation be correct? If that's the case, then Duncan's fight with Abomination makes sense, Coulson, who had just arrived, added gravely. It's likely that Duncan acted preemptively upon discovering Abomination's actions. The agents continued watching as the mysterious man inexplicably attacked Duncan, only to be intercepted by the alien resembling Abomination. A fierce battle broke out on the spot. Wherever the man and the alien went, destruction followed. Steel-reinforced concrete buildings crumbled like paper. The sheer physical force and brutality of their punches were staggering. Every move was designed to land a blow, with no defense whatsoever. The sole aim was to hit harder than the other. The relentless violence made Fury and the others frown deeply, speechless for a long time. The level of destruction was terrifying. Especially concerning was Duncan. If he truly used some mysterious means to extract Abomination's strength to create a new alien species. I thought he was just a minor threat, someone to keep under close surveillance. Turns out he's a much bigger problem. Fury broke the silence. He used this opportunity to create an unimaginably powerful alien being. Boss, this alien seems much stronger than Abomination and is growing more powerful. It's only been a short time, and it's already bulkier and more muscular. Its strength is catching up to that mysterious man, Hill observed. It's almost like Hulk, Fury concluded. One of our theories might actually be true. Considering Duncan's previous capture of a few vampires, we can tentatively conclude that he has found a way to transfer the strength of different life forms to these aliens. It could be one of several methods: surgical organ transplants, devouring, or genetic extraction. But all of these require time. From when Duncan acted against Abomination to now, how much time has even passed? Coulson was baffled. Elevate Duncan's threat level by 4 levels. He warrants close attention and heightened precautions, Fury instructed. Could such a life form exist, one capable of stealing strength and growing at an alarming rate? S.H.I.E.L.D. had underestimated Duncan. In this incident, they had been completely outplayed by him, inadvertently facilitating the rise of a new, formidable power. The bitter realization was hard to swallow. Duncan, on the other hand, was thoroughly enjoying himself. Watching the fierce clash between the two figures from afar filled him with satisfaction. At first, the alien born from Abomination was clearly at a disadvantage, taking numerous punches before landing even a single blow on Akari's. But as the battle continued, the alien's terrifying potential began to emerge. Its genetic foundation, derived from Abomination, essentially Hulk's DNA, was its greatest asset. The more it fought, the angrier it became. The angrier it became, the stronger it grew. This exponential increase in power left even Akari's dumbfounded. After only a few rounds, the creature he thought of as a deviant was holding its own against him. Punches were no longer effective. His heat vision could only char the alien's metallic armor, unable to penetrate further. Icarus's only remaining advantage was his ability to fly. He refused to believe the creature could sprout wings on the spot. No matter what you are, if you fight for that human, then I'll kill him. Akari's growled, his eyes flashing with killing intent. He struck the alien's chest, sending it flying backward, then immediately unleashed his heat vision and shot into the sky, intending to leave the creature behind and target Duncan directly. But the alien possessed incredible combat instincts. It couldn't fly, but with its muscular legs and powerful tail, it leapt high into the air, grabbed Icarus's leg, yanked him down, and clawed through his armor, leaving deep gashes in his flesh. The brutal clash continued, and as they grew familiar with each other's strength, their fight became predictable. Akari's, desperate to escape, kept failing. The longer the battle dragged on, the more frustrated Akari's became, especially after sustaining injuries. Risking exposure to billions of humans was not worth it. He had wanted to exploit the deviants as his secret weapon, yet the situation had spiraled out of control. I can't keep fighting. Even if I win, it won't matter, Akari's thought bitterly. Through the battle, he realized this creature wasn't a deviant. Its physical changes were due to natural muscle and bone expansion, fundamentally different from the energy-based transformations of deviants. Even worse, Earth's strongest individuals were undoubtedly now aware of him and the Eternals. Enough. That's it. These creatures aren't deviants, Akari's shouted. Good speech, Duncan retorted, his voice resonating with righteous fervor. But I've confirmed one thing. You're the real deviant, the ultimate enemy of humanity. Chapter 16. Whales and Escapes. You want to come and go as you please. Did you even ask for my permission? Duncan stood stoically, surrounded by several xenomorphs. Originally, he could have quietly parasitized Abomination, steadily accumulating his strength without having to reveal his powers so blatantly. But unfortunately, the ill-intentioned Akari's showed up. Since you're already here, why not stay a while? If possible, Duncan would have gladly turned Akari's into one of his kind. Having a budget Superman, Xenomorph would greatly enhance his combat strength. Although extremely difficult, as Duncan currently lacked the power to defeat Akari's or find an opportunity to parasitize him, Akari's wasn't as easy to deal with as Abomination. Suddenly, rip, Akari's was finally injured. His opponent didn't just have arms and legs but also a powerful tail and a deadly surprise weapon, the inner jaw. The Abomination Xenomorph violently launched its inner jaw, tearing a chunk of flesh from Icarus's face. Akari's widened his eyes in disbelief, touching his blood-soaked face as his gaze turned crimson. It wasn't just seething anger but an unprecedented anxiety creeping into his mind. He wasn't really the Superman. He could be injured, could flee, and had to weigh the risks of battles like this. Was it even worth exposing himself in such a risky fight? Most importantly, Akari's had no idea what the limits of the Abomination Xenomorph were. The more they fought, the stronger it seemed. It was breaking him mentally. With a furious roar, Akari's smashed his fist into the Abomination Xenomorph's face, following up with another series of devastating blows to its head. The speed at which their bodies clashed shattered the sound barrier effortlessly, creating shockwaves comparable to explosions. Visible ripples of destruction spread outwards. Tanks fired rounds, and a swarm of armed helicopters launched missiles. At this level of destruction, the losses were too catastrophic for the military to remain passive. General Ross, standing aboard a helicopter, watched the chaos before him with vacant eyes. If it were just Abomination fighting the Hulk, there might still be room to salvage the situation. But now, forget it. He was bound to face a military tribunal. Who is this flying guy? And who is he fighting? Ross bellowed, unable to keep his composure. Fire on both of them. Akaris, struck by several rounds, retaliated by unleashing his heat vision, destroying all helicopters in sight, including Ross's. Just as Ross was about to perish on the spot, Iron Man returned in time, shielding Ross from the explosion with his back and grabbing him midair, accelerating toward a nearby skyscraper. I don't like you, but if you die here, that'd be a joke, Tony remarked. Tony Stark, you should have let those monsters kill me. You're right, that would have forced the government to deal with them, and your super soldier program would continue without a hitch, Tony replied coldly, dropping Ross onto the skyscraper before flying back to the battlefield. To be honest, Tony thought intervening was suicidal. The Mark III suit couldn't withstand punches from either of these two monsters. But he had no other choice. At that moment, as if by coincidence, the abomination Xenomorph, now battered, had its head cracked open, spilling its highly corrosive blood everywhere. Icarus's eyes lit up. Victory was imminent, or so he thought. But in the next second, the corrosive blood splattered onto his face, causing him to let out an inhuman wail. Akaris was stunned as he felt his face melting. Ah! His screams were piercing as he clutched his face. But this only made it worse. His hands came into contact with the acidic blood, which began eating away at them too. This isn't just a mutated species, this thing is leagues more terrifying. The more injured it became, the more dangerous it grew, unleashing even deadlier attacks. The abomination Xenomorph, now fully enraged, ignored its rapidly healing injuries, extending its massive arms to grab Akaris tightly before smashing him through a dozen skyscrapers. Akaris was shaken. Deep down, he still believed he could win if the fight continued. But against an enemy whose blood alone could inflict such catastrophic damage, the fight wasn't worth it. Weighing the pros and cons, Akaris decided to flee. Without hesitation, he used the momentum to escape, crashing through the rooftop of a building and smashing General Ross into a mist of red as he ascended into the sky. Covered in blood and gore, Akaris didn't stop. He soared into the night sky, disappearing from view, desperate to find a safe place to deal with the acid now corroding his bones. As for Ross, no matter how influential he was, Akaris didn't care about ordinary humans. All he wanted was to escape to safety and clean off the acid. Moments later, Tony Stark hovered silently above the scene, staring at the blood-stained rooftop and wreckage below. If I say Ross's death has nothing to do with me, that it wasn't intentional and purely an accident, Jarvis, do you think the judges will believe me? Unlikely, sir. Based on my calculations, they probably won't, though they lack concrete evidence. Great, Jarvis, let's rehearse our testimony. If they ask whether it was deliberate or accidental. For the first time, Tony felt being a superhero was far from glamorous. One person dying was troublesome enough, let alone someone as high profile as Ross, and because Tony had deliberately left him there. This is a disaster. But don't misunderstand, Tony wasn't lamenting Ross's fate. Ross's shady dealings meant even if he survived tonight, the best outcome for him would have been life in prison. Tony was lamenting his own misfortune. Barely into his superhero career, and he was already embroiled in such a mess. Tonight had been a harsh lesson. If the Hulk and Abomination weren't bad enough, the two new monsters that showed up were even worse, with their reckless destruction and horrifying combat abilities. For the first time, humanity truly realized that superhumans like these lived among them. If they fought without restraint, they could easily cause apocalyptic disasters. Who could stop them? The military with its tanks and helicopters. So far, that seemed ineffective. And deploying high-powered weapons wasn't always an option, and might not work anyway. Tony shifted his gaze to the abomination Xenomorph, landing 50 meters ahead of Duncan. The previously feral and violent Xenomorph now stood calmly beside Duncan, its grotesquely swollen muscles receding as it silently waited. Impressive. It's like a well-behaved little girl, but I'm guessing it doesn't have a gender. Tony approached Duncan, skimming through the data Jarvis had uploaded on him. Tony Stark, nice to meet you under these circumstances, Duncan said with a kind expression. You're celebrating too early. More trouble is coming your way soon, Tony retorted. Buddy, do you have any idea the global chaos your creations are causing? Chapter 17, Building a Legion always requires a good start. I know. Long before I decided to take action, I was already prepared to face this reality, Duncan said, his gaze fixed on Iron Man standing at a distance, maintaining his vigilance. It was easy for him to imagine that Iron Man had already deployed the advanced weaponry of his armor and could attack him at any moment. So calm. Who do you think you are? A superhero? Or maybe an exceptional biologist? A genius entrepreneur funded by government grants? Tony's voice came through the armor. Duncan pondered for a moment. In terms of entrepreneurship, I do have some insights. Just take a look at these remarkable little fellows, beautiful and awe-inspiring. Aren't they my best business cards? Little fellows. Tony instinctively glanced at the alien creatures behind Duncan, his eyes lingering on the 4-meter-tall abomination alien in silence. He mentally classified Duncan, a conceited show-off who uses every opportunity in public to flaunt his abilities without restraint. Sometimes, proud people dislike others of the same ilk even more. For a fleeting moment, Tony thought of someone he'd met before, a man with some difficulty walking. The man claimed to have extraordinary research results and preened like a peacock trying to impress Tony. To Tony, it was both laughable and childish. Everyone knew Tony Stark was a super genius, after all. The line of people, hoping to curry favor with him could stretch around every burger joint in New York. Only people who lack confidence in themselves feel the need to find a stage and tell others how great they are, Tony remarked. You and your big guy have caused the second wave of chaos tonight. Someone's bound to come looking for you. Accountability. I was clearly performing a heroic act, taking down the mutated creatures hiding among humans and causing havoc. The cheers of the crowd are the best reward I could ask for. Tony couldn't help but marvel at Duncan's psychological resilience. It was terrifyingly calm. He could even spar with Tony in the art of shamelessness. What piqued Tony's interest more was the term, mutated species. Jarvis. Sir, after conducting a secondary data filtration, I've located 7 suspicious files. However, they are all locked. Based on technical analysis, the organizations suspected to have knowledge of these mutated species include S.H.I.E.L.D., SWORD, the 10 Rings, the Brotherhood, Atlantis, Jarvis reported dutifully. Tony's heart skipped a beat. This was only what Jarvis had uncovered from global information networks. What about the data it hadn't found? What exactly were these mutated species? Some kind of offshoot of mutants or inhumans? All right, I'll admit it, you successfully diverted my attention. Tonight had been intense for Tony. Any one of the combatants he'd faced could have easily crushed him in his armor. Your armor is too weak and has too many limitations. It needs upgrades. Maybe you should create different models tailored for specific enemies. That's my paid advice, $100,000. Make sure it's in my account. No need to thank me. After leaving that remark, Duncan turned with his alien creatures and walked away, heading back to his base on the outskirts of New York. I need to start developing Mark IV, or even Mark V and V. No, maybe I should follow his advice and create specialized suits for different threats, Tony muttered. He instructed Jarvis to record and analyze all the information about the aliens, especially the abomination alien. To deal with such monsters, crafting a suit designed specifically to counter them didn't seem like a bad idea. Jarvis, wire him the money. Make it $100,001, the extra dollar is a tip from the infinitely charming Tony Stark. But seriously, that advice was cheap. I could have thought of it myself. Tony grumbled, and so, the chaotic night came to an end. For most people, it was a terrifying and baffling night. They witnessed monsters fighting, and then it was all over without explanation. The public could do little but witness the military's incompetence. However, global public opinion erupted, putting everyone with special abilities in the spotlight. As usual, the internet was flooded with anti-mutant rhetoric and theories about the mutant threat. Experts paraded across TV screens, earnestly debating the mutants as if they'd committed some heinous act on Broadway. The world was like a massive spinning vortex, with the descent into the abyss of chaos seeming inevitable. Duncan's emergence was like a hard kick, accelerating the process for the world and everyone influential enough to affect it. Seated on the abomination alien's shoulder, Duncan remained calm, returning to his lair under the watchful eyes of countless satellites. The sign for Wayland Private Research Institute still hung prominently. In the past, it had been a joke to many, but from now on, it wouldn't be. No matter how informal the name sounded, it demanded attention. The death of the abomination and the birth of the abomination alien, its immense power far exceeding the former, could not be ignored. The creatures called aliens became the subject of secret research and covetous desire at every level. These creatures were extraordinary. Looking back at human history and Earth itself, nothing like them had ever existed. They seemed capable of absorbing the strength of mature individuals and growing even stronger. Duncan and his alien squad returned unimpeded to their dilapidated building, where he even greeted Dum-Dum from the neighboring building. "You won't have much time to relax like this. All kinds of people will come looking for you," Dum-Dum said hesitantly. Under normal circumstances, he should have taken Duncan back to S.H.I.E.L.D. for brainwashing or long-term detention to prevent social chaos. But at this point, that seemed incredibly difficult. When Duncan had been less of a threat, S.H.I.E.L.D. hadn't paid much attention to him. Now that his talents and the aliens' terrifying power were evident, pulling him in, or taking him down, felt like it might be too late. Duncan ignored him. Reaching this point had been inevitable. Duncan knew the only ones he could fully trust were his aliens. Naturally, he had to seize every opportunity to grow his power. But organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D. would undoubtedly try to limit Duncan's growth, keeping the alien population within a safe, controllable range, or even wiping out all aliens, including Duncan himself. This fundamental conflict was irreconcilable. The warrior alien born from the abomination is just the beginning. There will be more powerful aliens under my command in the future. I won't stop getting stronger. And since others won't stop, I might as well keep pushing forward until the very end. Chapter 18, Intel on the Deviants. S.H.I.E.L.D. had taken a keen interest in Duncan. Starting the next day, the number of agents surveilling him increased tenfold. 10 masked operatives armed with Dum-Dum bullets took shifts monitoring him from a neighboring building. Various factions also approached Duncan, all outwardly polite, extending olive branches. Yet none received a direct response. This was expected. After the intense battle that resulted in the death of a general, the existence of the Xenomorphs and their potential as bioweapons became widely known. Duncan's status skyrocketed, giving him the leverage to reject their overtures outright. The fact that Duncan hadn't eliminated their envoys was, in itself, a baffling gesture that left even the most ruthless individuals puzzled. During the Broadway incident, newly appointed Deputy Director George Stacy visited the scene to console injured civilians. He promised to request government funding to bolster the police force and prevent such incidents from recurring. Duncan read aloud from the newspaper before tossing it aside. The article was filled with platitudes, but one detail caught his attention: George Stacy's promotion. Clearly, this was a sugar-coated bribe to silence him. Compared to dull news reports, watching certain individuals perform is far more entertaining. Even Kingpin sent someone, openly offering money to build goodwill. After all, no one turns down money. But I never expected someone to sneak into my territory. Have I been a poor host? Duncan sighed, his expression unchanging. Yet, several xenomorphs, previously lying still like large dogs, suddenly sprang into action, moving swiftly and silently through the building. Hidden in the shadows, Elektra's heart raced, betraying her position. She wasn't dealing with ordinary humans but someone far beyond normal capabilities, backed by a pack of xenomorphs. The xenomorphs moved with eerie coordination, their silence unnerving. Elektra abandoned any hope of stealth, realizing that a single misstep could mean her death. She cursed herself for venturing into such dangerous territory. A runner xenomorph appeared behind her, its tail poised to strike. If it hit, Elektra would be skewered like a kebab. Bang, bang, bang. Elektra spun around, firing precise shots at the xenomorphs' limbs while carefully avoiding their acidic blood. She winced as the blood corroded the floor, leaving gaping holes. Wait, I was only tracking Kingpin's men and ended up here. Elektra blurted out, realizing that stubbornness would only lead to a gruesome end. Watching videos and analyzing combat scenarios was one thing, facing these creatures in person was another. And these were just the weakest xenomorphs. If she encountered the Hulk-like one, what kind of power did Duncan, the man controlling these monsters, possess? A clever excuse, far more believable than a poorly crafted lie. So, am I to assume you're here on behalf of the Hand to provoke me? Or will you deny that the Hand knows nothing about me? Duncan clapped slowly. Elektra's expression darkened. Standing before Duncan, she felt utterly exposed. That's for the Five Fingers to decide. I'm just a ninja carrying out assassination missions. But personally, I doubt they'd be foolish enough to make an enemy of you. No, your presence here is already a statement from those 5 old fossils. From what I know, they're still discussing you. No decision has been made yet, Elektra revealed, her resolve wavering as 3 more xenomorphs emerged from the shadows, silently encircling her. No matter how she adjusted her stance or prepared to fight her way out, a xenomorph always blocked her path. Elektra watched in dread as the xenomorphs drooled, their inner jaws twitching. She gripped her weapons tightly, recalling the videos that showed their inner jaws, a terrifying weapon faster than bullets. Facing multiple xenomorphs, especially with more appearing out of nowhere, would be a death sentence. Elektra, you know so little about your 5 bosses. You don't even understand how they gained their power, mastering magic and ninjutsu, Duncan remarked, studying the woman before him. Elektra, Daredevil's former lover and a top-tier assassin for the Hand, was skilled in countless killing techniques. But without supernatural abilities, even the most trained human assassin fell short. In hand-to-hand combat, she might hold her own against a basic xenomorph, but against specialized variants, like those born from vampires, she stood no chance. Duncan couldn't fathom why the Hand would send someone like Elektra to confront him. He didn't believe in coincidences. The 5 Fingers, who had stolen the power of the dragon from K'un-Lun and extended their lifespans by centuries, were not the type to act without purpose. One of the Hand's key abilities, granted by their demonic patron, the Beast, was resurrecting the dead to serve as assassins, somewhat akin to DC's Court of Owls, though far less impressive. The Hand's obsession with assassination, backed by the Beast, made Elektra's presence here a clear message. Let her go. This rookie probably knows nothing. I can offer some intel, though. Those 5 are secretly investigating the deviants and the Flying Man, Coulson interjected, stepping forward with a serious expression. He quickly added, this one's free. Spare me, Coulson. I only needed money in the early stages. Once I had enough capital, extra dollars became irrelevant. But did I hear you correctly? Flying Man. Yes, the mysterious figure in blue and gold armor who fled after you defeated him. He killed General Ross. Some online are calling him a Tier-0 super criminal, on par with Magneto, Coulson explained matter-of-factly. I doubt Magneto would consider Ikaris his equal. So, after displaying his power, Ikaris earns the title, Flying Man. He's a proud individual. Once he learns of this, he'll hunt down everyone who calls him that, Duncan said with a smirk. Ikaris. Coulson perked up, finally finding an opening. Is that his name? You accused him of being a deviant. What are the deviants? How many like Ikaris exist? Elektra, relieved to be ignored, cautiously retreated while observing Coulson and Duncan. If not for the xenomorphs strategically blocking her escape routes, she would have fled already. The 2 men's casual conversation, completely disregarding her, left the young Elektra both relieved and slightly disheartened. Chapter 19, Your Shield. Duncan stared at the innocently blinking Coulson, convinced the man had no sincerity whatsoever. Coulson, while we aren't friends, I at least expect you not to deceive me with clumsy rhetoric. Duncan eyed Coulson with a strange look. Your Shield, an organization with a history so ancient that your actions have directly shaped human civilization, not some fledgling group founded last century as the rumors claim, must I spell this out for you? Duncan had studied this world thoroughly. Without mutants, things might have been simpler, but the existence of mutants, and their ties to the Eternals and Deviants, complicated everything. Across the multiverse, the origin of mutants was largely consistent, the Deviants. Thus, barring rare exceptions, Duncan had every reason to conclude that the mutants in his universe also descended from the long-extinct Deviants. The Celestials conducted experiments on countless life-bearing planets, creating 2 opposing races, the Eternals and the Deviants. Periodically, the Celestials would judge these creations. Those who passed were allowed to thrive, those who failed were eradicated. The Skrulls were a prime example. As a deviant offshoot, they exterminated the Eternals on their planet, passed the Celestials, Judgment, and eventually became one of the 3 great interstellar empires in the galaxy. But the Skrulls grew arrogant. Their gods attempted to replicate the Celestials, experiment on the Kree, only to backfire spectacularly. The Kree harnessed that power to rise at an explosive rate, becoming their greatest foes. The same pattern held for Earth's Eternals and Deviants, both crafted by the Celestials. Long before Ikaris and his cohort of Eternals, there were older generations of Eternals and Deviants who dominated Earth over 20,000 years ago, establishing a flourishing civilization that shaped the planet's history. Eons ago, when humans were still primitive, the Celestials designated Earth as a grand laboratory. They created the Eternals, beings of perfect genetics, ancestors of Thanos, and the Deviants, entities with limitless mutative genes, the rough progenitors of mutants. Earth 20,000 years ago was an era ruled by Eternals and Deviants. Back then, the Deviants were intelligent, technologically advanced beings who built cities and interstellar warships, a far cry from the feral, dog-like, Deviants, fought by Ikaris and his 10 eternal comrades. The 2 races warred for dominance. The outcome mirrored the Skrulls' story. the deviants, with their infinite mutative genes, emerged victorious. The genetically perfect Eternals were defeated and fled Earth for Titan. During their exodus, they were attacked by the Kree Empire, dissected alive, and experimented on, birthing a new branch of humanity, the Inhumans, now led by the moon-dwelling Black Bolt. Though the deviants won, their triumph was short-lived. The Celestials deemed them flawed and exterminated them. Yet their mutative genes survived, passed down through generations of humans, eventually manifesting as mutants. This cataclysmic event 20,000 years ago altered Earth's trajectory. Without it, mutants would not exist today. Conversely, the presence of mutants confirms that Earth once hosted, and destroyed, the ancient deviants. The fallout cascaded through history. The power vacuum left by the two extinct races allowed demons like Zarathos to invade Earth. Vengeful spirits of vengeance rained from the sky to combat them, one later merging with a motorcyclist to become the Ghost Rider. Even pivotal events like Apocalypse's rise, the Norse gods battling a celestial fleet, Zhang of the Han dynasty forcing a celestial to give birth, Da Vinci crafting solar armor to expel a nascent celestial from the sun, and the schism between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Chinese counterpart, the Great Ten, all traced back to the eternal deviant conflict. Thanos, genocide of Titan's Eternals, descendants of Earth's originals, was no exception. Thus, upon learning mutants existed in this universe's Earth, Duncan had braced himself. He'd scoured historical records for traces of these buried truths. As for S.H.I.E.L.D., one of two branches born from the ancient, Holy S.H.I.E.L.D. Brotherhood, a global supernatural organization founded during the Eastern Han dynasty by figures like Zhang, how could they know nothing about the deviants? Even if S.H.I.E.L.D. lacked intel on the true deviants exterminated 20,000 years ago, when humanity was still subordinate to Eternals and deviants, surely they had records on the lesser, beast-like deviants deployed by the celestial Arishem over the past millennia. These crude deviants were hunted by the 11 memory-wiped Eternals, Arishem's disposable tools. Could S.H.I.E.L.D. truly have missed all that? Impossible. Coulson's expression shifted drastically. This doesn't add up. Coulson frowned, locking eyes with Duncan. We've combed through every file. You're just a moderately clever scientist. There's no way you could access this level of classified history. Why not? Because of your platform. You've never operated at a tier high enough to uncover secrets buried this deep. Then, Coulson, is it possible that what you've found about me is exactly what I wanted you to find? Duncan smirked. Coulson fell silent. He still thought Duncan was bluffing, but the man's knowledge defied logic. After a moment, Coulson abandoned prying into Duncan's secrets and pivoted. Let me guess, Akaris isn't one of those giant reptilian deviants. If you mean the recent millennia's deviants, then no. They're unrelated, Duncan replied cryptically. Coulson instantly grasped the implication, his eyes widening in shock. Unbelievable. Duncan even knows about the ancient deviants who briefly ruled Earth. Even S.H.I.E.L.D., with its millennia of archives, had scarce records of that era. I'll report this conversation verbatim. So this is one of your trump cards. The question is, do you have a steady intelligence source, or have you personally witnessed pivotal moments in human history? Coulson's interest in Duncan skyrocketed. He resolved to scour S.H.I.E.L.D.'s historical files for any trace of Duncan. Yes, he now suspected Duncan was an ancient figure who'd lived for centuries. Such beings weren't unheard of. Take Azazel, the demonic mutant revered by Magneto. He'd survived since Apocalypse's reign, over 5,000 years. Duncan shrugged dismissively. Coulson chose his next words carefully. Since Akaris isn't a deviant, that's for the best. Otherwise, complications would arise, you understand. If he were one of the true deviants from 20,000 years ago, with their infinite mutative genes. Duncan nodded. If Akaris were linked to the ancient, sapient deviants, Earth's current mutants, already prone to supremacist ideologies, might weaponize that lineage to claim superiority over humanity. Some might already be digging into their origins. The implications would be catastrophic. Chapter 20. Mystique discovers the truth. The issue of mutants is one of humanity's most pressing internal conflicts. The Inhumans, loosely considered descendants of the Eternals, originally emerged among Earth's human population, much like mutants. However, Black Bolt had since led their entire race to reside on the moon. This race, capable of extraordinary powers and technological advancements, poses no threat to humanity. On the contrary, they can be seen as a sub-branch of the human species, a potential ally. In some parallel universes, Black Bolt is even a member of the Illuminati, a cornerstone in protecting Earth. Mutants, however, are a different story. While they may be considered distant relatives of the deviants, they should rightfully be regarded as a crucial branch of humanity, far more integrated into human society than, say, vampires. Yet, humans and mutants remain locked in endless conflict. In the eyes of many, the situation has become a zero-sum game. One side must eliminate the other. And that is a disaster. I understand your concerns, Duncan said. But the fact is, I don't trust certain mutant organizations, like the Brotherhood. There's no way they're ignorant about the history of the extinct deviants. They're too focused on proving their supposed superiority over humans. They must have investigated these historical events. Coulson nodded. You're right. There's even an academic field called Mutant Origin Studies, which is quite popular among them. What Coulson feared most was mutants identifying Akaris, the Eternal, as an ancient deviant. That would complicate matters immensely. Unfortunately, what S.H.I.E.L.D. feared was exactly what Duncan hoped to see. Duncan harbored no particular grudge against the 11 Eternals, but he didn't have any fondness for them either. He held even less regard for the inferior deviants, whom he saw as little more than tools that Arishem had reused for millions of years. The Eternals and deviants capable of procreation and building civilizations on planets like Skrullos and Earth were a completely different breed from the mindless versions seen elsewhere. Moreover, Duncan had already confronted Akaris, the strongest fighter among the 11 Eternals. With powers like a budget Superman, Duncan mused, he might be weak, but if I could parasitize him, it'd be great. Seeing Duncan's expression, Coulson stood up. Well, that concludes this meeting. I have many other tasks to attend to. But, Mr. Duncan, you don't want to see this world descend into chaos, do you? Coulson cast a meaningful glance at the xenomorphs surrounding them, his eyes filled with deep apprehension. One of his key objectives in coming here was to observe these terrifying creatures up close. To see them parasitize Abomination and produce an offspring surpassing its host's combat prowess was enough to send chills down Coulson's spine, despite his extensive experience. What was their reproductive capacity? What were their limits for parasitism? Could they only infect mammals? Only ordinary creatures? And what about gods? This universe wasn't lacking in gods. Many advanced interstellar civilizations had their own pantheons, like the Skrulls, who worshipped Skrull gods. Coulson now knew these creatures were called Xenomorphs and confirmed their extreme obedience to Duncan, though the reason for this remained unclear. There were far too many mysteries surrounding the Xenomorphs. And Duncan, who had somehow gained complete control over them, was an even bigger enigma. As Coulson left, he pointed at Elektra and said, if you don't mind, I'd be happy to take her with me. The Hand has an infamous reputation and a record of major crimes. I do mind. She's staying with me. All right, Coulson replied, not pushing the matter. With a worried expression, he departed. Elektra, left behind, stood frozen, her face pale and her spirits crushed. After eavesdropping for so long, she had pieced together many startling revelations. The deviants seemed connected to the Eternals. That flying man wasn't a deviant. It was all an incomprehensible mess. But Elektra didn't care about any of it. She only wanted to escape. The problem now, Ms. Elektra, is that you can't escape, nor can you defeat me, Duncan said as he approached her. Whether you came here to hunt down Kingpin or on orders from the Five Fingers, you've fallen into my hands. Duncan scrutinized Elektra from head to toe, then remarked, you've also learned many secrets you shouldn't know, like the deviants in Alaska. That's beyond your clearance. Truthfully, Elektra had potential. Properly utilized, she could be of some help. If you're going to kill me, just do it. Elektra stared at Duncan as he approached, her voice defiant, though her eyes gleamed with resolve. She couldn't defeat the Xenomorphs, but surely she could take down a single human. When Duncan was within a meter of her, Elektra moved. A dagger shot out from her sleeve, aimed straight at Duncan's throat. She wasn't trying to kill him, only to take him hostage and use him as leverage to intimidate the Xenomorphs, giving her a chance to escape. Her speed, timing, and courage were impeccable. As a world-class assassin, she couldn't imagine failing at such close range. Clang! Duncan nonchalantly extended two fingers, effortlessly pinching the dagger's tip. His precision and speed were terrifying. Elektra felt as though her blade had struck adamantium. No matter how much force she applied, she couldn't push it forward even an inch. How is this possible? Elektra froze, her expression shifting. She blurted out, you're a superhuman. Otherwise, how could you have such strength? By your standards, yes, Duncan replied. But don't envy me, miss. Soon, you'll be one too. And then, you won't be so stubborn. Duncan opened his hand. A facehugger crawled forward. It's beautiful, isn't it? So obedient. And it likes you. Wait, no, don't. Elektra, terrified, tried to resist, but the Xenomorphs swarmed her, pinning her down. She attempted to bite down on the poison hidden in her teeth, but a Xenomorph messenger forced her jaw open. As something warm and white entered her mouth and slid down her throat, Elektra lost consciousness. To be clear, Duncan had no intention of letting the facehugger burst from her chest. Even if the process succeeded, the resulting xenomorph would merely be a drone, incapable of matching the power of an abomination xenomorph hybrid. All Duncan needed was the parasitism stage. Few knew the facehugger had another function: it could implant its genetic material without chest bursting. This method allowed the host to gain the genetic strength stored within the facehugger. Duncan was the only one capable of controlling the facehugger to prevent chest bursting. This was how he had transformed from an ordinary human into a superhuman capable of withstanding a punch from abomination. Using this approach, the stronger the xenomorphs became and the better the genes they acquired, the more Duncan's power would exponentially grow. Duncan waved his hand, dismissing the xenomorphs. He left Elektra where she was, knowing she could no longer escape his control, neither in body nor in mind. Before leaving, Duncan cast an imperceptible glance at a messenger xenomorph lurking in the corner. As the xenomorphs dispersed, a seemingly ordinary messenger xenomorph in the corner discreetly revealed a signal transmitter. Hidden from Duncan and the other xenomorphs, it sent out a transmission. "This is Mystique. I've successfully infiltrated and obtained critical information. The flying man is a deviant, and the location is Alaska.